Orange Devils, Hurricanes here in Puckberg. Rangers, Bruins, Maple Leafs, it's a Puckberg. The goal of many is that cup of Stanley. Pucktales, woo! Pucktales, woo! Here in Puckberg.
Welcome, everyone, to the newest episode of Here in Puckberg on the Hockey Podcast Network. I am your host, Kyle Sullivan, a.k.a. Shaggy Von Doom, with another episode of Pucktales.
And this is Jersey Joe of Heads Up Hockey.
And there we go. And as you heard, we have Jersey Joe of Heads Up Hockey. He wanted to come by here in Puckberg and share his story. So, first of all, Jersey Joe, how's it going, my friend?
It's a wonderful evening down here in the beautiful community of Ocean Grove. It's right next to Asbury Park. As you probably want to bring up, yes, that's the same Asbury Park where the New Jersey Devils did their draft party. And I actually hot taked a few months back. I told a different hockey podcast network guy, Neil Villapiano, and I told a different Devils podcaster, Trey Matthews, I said, don't be surprised if the Devils pick a defenseman named Szymon Nemec out of Slovakia from Nitra, because he's a really good shooter, really good skater. He's very young. He's been playing Slovak hockey for a while. So I said he's going to be the best skater out of the bunch that they're going to select from if they don't get Slavkovsky.
And it's funny you bring up those two names. Neil is a former resident of here in Puckberg. We had him on sharing his story. And Trey is a peer of mine because when I'm not on here in Puckberg, I am on Locked On Avalanche with Chris Maselli. I am a co-host of the Avalanche show. So I know Trey very, very well. So, and that was a you picked a good one there. That was a good pick right there. And yeah, I didn't hear a lot of names talking about him. So very, very good pick there.
So, yeah, if people want to understand, like, I have my own podcast called Heads Up Hockey. It used to be called the Jersey Joe Corner years ago. And one of the things I always talked about was the growth in European hockey and how the game has changed since the early 2000s. Now that we've seen these European teams and leagues developing these guys, you've seen last season with Moritz Seider from Germany, from the DEL. Now Central Europe is starting to produce high quality defensemen. So what I will say this, not just for Devils fans, but also Blue Jackets fans, is that Juricek is going to be a great defenseman, right off the hop when he gets ready with a big slapper he's got, but physical guy. Reminds me of Zidlicky, but Nemec reminds me of a younger, more exciting version of Eric Chernak.
And it's fascinating, and we'll get to your story in just a minute. I like that you're starting off right here because this is something I've been thinking about. What is going on in Europe where this new renaissance is going on with European hockey? Like, it's been kind of quiet for maybe the past 10, 15 years. It's been your Canadian born, your United States, and then you have your one drop in the bucket European. And now things are starting to shift the other way. You're seeing the rise in the global games, and the Avalanche are going on this season. They're having one as well. And the World Cup of Hockey is now rumored to return. What do you think is going on with the international interest in the NHL? Where do you think that's coming from?
Well, first off, when you have these older veterans that retire or move on to coaching or become scouts, they are looking for different players that they filter through first. It's going to be the development stage. And for 10 years, 15 years, you look at these kids move up the ladder of each system. And then you got other kids in those countries. When I grew up as a kid, We always thought of the European countries as soccer, soccer, soccer.
Mhm.
Not exactly the truth, because I visited Slovakia before in person, and you go bike along the highway there. There is a bus showing in Slovak in the pride of hockey that you can see like a goalie mask. So you
Mm.
know they're advertising the sport of the country.
And it's funny, like you mentioned that. I remember, like, in the heyday of the Avalanche Red Wings rivalry, like, they had, kinda like their little Russian line,
Yeah.
and, like, you don't see teams comprised like that anymore, and, like, you have your Ovechkins, understandable,
Yep.
but it's not so much a line comprised of. There's been a shift in the talent, and I don't know if it's just because of the state of Canadian hockey and maybe the rise of the popularity in the States, but
Mhm.
there's been kind of a talent pool shift, and maybe it's could be the rise of popularity and refinement in the AHL and ECHL system,
Mhm.
but now things are starting to balance out the other way, and these global games are starting to get the interest going. The Olympics, you're starting to get more names out of Olympic teams.
Mhm.
And it's now starting to go back to an international sport. So
Yep.
it's fascinating where you're seeing these names drafted, um, going back to those glory years of more international type play.
Yeah, so you bring up the international stuff. So, when I talk to people about, when I look for each draft class, I will say this, a lot of it, in my opinion, it stems from other countries from being beaten bad by the North Americans and the Northern Europeans, the Finns, the Swedes. Then now you got the Germans and the Swiss who are becoming the new powerhouses very soon. And you see these, it's a healthy jealousy. I hate to make it an oxymoron, but that kind of passion drives those international squads. And I've seen the Czechs and Slovaks, they fight each other like hell on ice. But the Slovaks beating the Russians the past several times in the World Juniors, to me, speaks high volumes about not only the interest, it is the passion about the international stage, where there's a bit of nationalism, but there's also a stem of, pride in your game as well and playing well. And speaking of playing well, I do have to throw in Tomasz Tatar into this,
Mhm.
where he played well against France and Germany. And I saw a game where he played well against Germany, and it was like a FU match.
Yeah.
This the Slovaks were doing. I noticed Slavkovsky was getting a little physical. I noticed Nemec was getting to be more into the physical side a little bit more, learning to be what it takes to play playoff style type hockey. So now, when you see these countries want to beat the living crap out of each other, may I use that? Um, Definitely, I've seen the scouting report mentally show me that if these guys can play like this in a more refined way for an 82 game season and then some, it's going to be very entertaining for the league in the NHL, building its brand.
And see, I like that you bring up the nationalism side of things because with everything that has been going on with Russia and Ukraine and how different
And
leagues
no
have been.
Belarus.
Yeah, and you see how things have been handled there. And you've been seeing the shifts in the World Juniors and Olympic play, and how teams are just kind of getting tired of being embarrassed. It has that same kind of feel as everything going around at the time of Miracle for the United States, where um, it was that same sense of nationalism, and you get tired of being embarrassed, and you start comprising your team to be different and be better because there's more on the line off the ice that you carry on that crest when you go into the game.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fascinating, like, no matter what goes on in history, like, the names change, but the storylines are the same. It's the same weaving in and out, and I'm
Mhm.
interested to see how this, little power shift goes. It's,
Oh, yeah.
it
It
it's great that you pointed that out because, like, that's something I've been kind of watching from afar. Like, outside of the NHL, the storylines that we were talking about 40, 50, 60 years ago
Mhm.
are starting to
And
repeat theirself a little bit, and it makes the game a little
yeah.
bit more interesting, and as a fan, we all get to reap the benefits of such.
Oh, absolutely. My old, co-host, Jim Berringer, and I, we had the guy, from The Miracle on Ice. He wasn't necessarily just a fan. This guy was actually a, um, like, photographer who went
Mm,
to, a couple of the USA games, and he, at one point, said, "I didn't cheer, I didn't, this and that, he just stayed the course." And so one of the things was like, um, if there's another person who's gonna do something like that, let's say the World Cup of Hockey occurs, there's gonna be someone with a great story about, I hope to hell, in a good way, that they do insert Russia and Belarus. Because I want there to be a miracle type of chaos. I want there to be a little bit more of a conflict.
yeah.
And I know the IHF banned, uh, temporarily banned Belarus and Russia. But as a New Jersey Devils fan, I want to see Belarus get more exposure in the international stage because of Yegor Sharangovich. And then you have, the Vancouver Canucks with Danila Klimovich, the
Mhm,
youngster out of Belarus. Then there's another kid, a goaltender the Flyers drafted over a year ago. Uh, Kirill Gerasimyuk, I believe, if I remember correctly. Anyways, I want to see these kinds of players uh, play the World Cup of Hockey if possible. And I know the political establishment would speak out against me because I'm an independent mind. But, if you want to be like 1980s, you have to allow the protagonist and the antagonist to go at each other.
and you mentioned that you're a New Jersey Devils fan.
Mhm.
You're in Asbury Park wearing a Rutgers shirt.
Yep. Rutgers won 22-21 at Boston.
Ironically enough, like, we're by the way, to everyone listening and watching this episode, we are recording this on the first Saturday night of college football season. I'm
Yep.
recording this, and I'm gonna reveal my team right now. My Auburn Tigers are up 28-7 on Mercer. So,
Well,
um
there you go.
um, so let's get to your core real quick.
Yep.
Jersey Joe,
Yep.
how in the world did you fall in love with the game of hockey?
Well, first off, I my mom is from New Jersey. I was brought up in Western Mass for 16 years. And I grew up playing street hockey with neighbors. And, back then you had the Hartford Whalers. And
Mhm,
I was born in Springfield, Mass. So the feed from there was technically the Hartford Whalers feed. But then once the Whalers relocated, it became the Hartford Wolfpack feed because that became the farm team in the AHL.
mhm,
Then you also had people wearing Springfield Falcons. Now they're called something else.
mhm.
Uh, Tom Fitzgerald played for Team Mass. I didn't know about this, but my brother-in-law, Danny, runs DK's hockey shop. And so when I
Okay.
was about close to 16 years old,
Wow.
he had a son named Joey Bouchard. And I saw his son.
All right, we had the little bit of a technical hiccup there, but you just mentioned Bouchard, and continue on. Tell me more about Bouchard and where your story is at this point.
So when I first saw my future brother-in-law, Danny Bouchard, his son Joey Bouchard began to skate when he was like 1 years old. And I remember as he got older, he learned how to skate outside in the Western Mass winters, and being cold out there. Plus, his dad then a year or few later, he and his business partner Keith acquired another place in Enfield, Connecticut. So that's where the business is at. So it's called DK's Hockey, Dan and Keith. So they have a couple like practice rinks, and
Mhm.
I saw Joey and the under 10 uh, team, practice there, and I saw Joey taking some, shots on net and seeing some passes and all the good breakouts. I'm thinking if he does have a good future playing hockey, but not every kid's going to have a brilliant future. Not
Yeah.
everyone turns, but I got my sense of being uh, a future hockey scout in that area. So when I write, whether it's for a couple of the blogs I named in the earlier part of the portion of the podcast, now with InsideThePuck.com, I really like covering the youth uh, trajectory. I know a lot of people aren't interested in the U18s as much, but now I know with internet and streaming services now that I knew I was onto a trend watching him, and I gained a sense of what youth hockey does before you get to the 16 through 18 age group with the major junior circuit, and you have the college routes. And then you kind of think about the personal side of the player. And for me, as someone who likes to learn about the cap management, the asset management, my father is a financial advisor for United Bank of Switzerland, but um, I learned a little bit about that because my father, and having someone who works directly in hockey, and also my brother-in-law Danny has ties to Frank Vetrano because he is from East Long Meadow, Mass. I'm originally from there, but I'm a few years older than him. So when he mentioned him to me years ago, but he joined the Bruins,
Mhm.
uh, I was familiar with the name, and other people I knew back on Facebook from home in New England knew of him, and they knew that he was onto something good. And so I can see the work ethic in players like that.
And you mentioned growing up in Mass. Why didn't you become a Bruins fan? Just what made you go to the Devils and start covering the Devils? And I'm interested to find out where the fandom portion started, especially being in Mass. It's just kind of isn't that what happens when you like drink tap water, you automatically become a Bruins fan? Don't you just kind of get that from osmosis?
No, actually, mom's side has been in New Jersey since 1664. So, it,
Well,
so how people refer to their homeland as the motherland?
mhm,
Well, really do mean the motherland of the mother. So my family on her side's been in New Jersey, and also her side, also on her father's side, it's from Western PA. So New Jersey, growing up as a kid before 16 when I moved to New Jersey, had always had a special place in my heart, visiting my grandmother, visiting my cousins, my uncle, uh, everyone tied into my uncle as well. Um, Going to see Rutgers games growing up in 2005 before Shiano made them a winner. To me, learning the Jersey tude, whether you
mhm,
like that we're happy or we're upset about something, there's a passion. Um, Living in Western Mass at the time, um, a buddy of mine mentioned Martin Brodeur, and he knew that my mom was from New Jersey. So Tom was like kind of bringing me on to something, even though he was a Bruins fan. And he goes, "It's back in 2003." He goes, "The Devils look pretty good," and I said, "You know, I really like what they're doing, but this was before like streaming and all that other stuff." but ESPN was a thing still. But this was
Yeah.
like before.
That's interesting. So Martin Brodeur, pretty good goalie.
Mhm.
Um, not a lot of scouting going into that analysis right there. I mean, he passes the eye test and the numbers follow. Like Martin Brodeur, he's one of the greats. So around that time, you're kind of seeing the Devils the Devils dynasty starting to fade just a little bit. Um, that shine kind of goes away, especially by the 2010s. And you mentioned like that Jersey passion, whether you're happy or they're upset, you're going to know about it because that's Jersey and that's what they do. Hey, I'm a Kevin Smith fan. I know all about Jersey, so I I know everything I know about Jersey. I've seen in every Clerks movie, so
Yeah.
I'm well versed. Um, and for you to have ties to Jersey long before the country was a country, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's for a lot of people, I mean, they think, "Oh, New York. Oh, cool." And they go, "New Jersey, what's this?" Well, New Jersey is an important place where you wouldn't have had outdoor hockey if it weren't for Thomas Edison in Edison, New Jersey.
Yeah,
And without that light bulb, how are we supposed to have indoor rinks? So, how are you supposed
you
to go
know,
from A to
I
B?
and that's pretty good scouting there. Cannot do much without Martin Brodeur in your story or Thomas Edison. So
Nope. Two amazing people.
see, everybody listening and watching today, that there's your two free scouting picks right there. If you if Thomas Edison or Martin Brodeur is someone you have to draft, pick them high.
Yeah. I mean, look, um, I know it's kind of weird. Like I had to throw those in, but one of my favorite things the Devils do is that they do a really good pregame video show.
Mhm,
And Ken Danico, he mentioned like we are New Jersey type
mhm.
video. It showed like how the team went from 1982 to becoming a big contender in the 90s to the 2000s and being part of something that is blue collar. And
Yeah,
well, technically, I call it red collar because
that
I don't
makes
want it
sense.
to be associated with the team across the pond at that old dumpy ground that's overpriced tickets where you have to pay Wall Street Journal prices.
And it's a funny thing you bring that up. Like we kind of know the Devils now, looking back from this point in 2022 at the Devils that they're not what they used to be, like in the 90s and 2000s, but they're trying to build. And over time, we have seemed to forgotten what Wayne Gretzky used to refer to the Devils as.
A Mickey Mouse organization?
Those comments don't circulate much anymore.
No.
The more the cups tallied, the less that narrative stuck.
Mhm.
And I find it funny, like those were very profound comments when they were made, and they seem to stick with that team mentally, and you could tell it in their play for a while. And that's why that first cup honestly felt like it meant so much to the Devils because they overcame the narrative that the great one bestowed upon them, and then they did it again, and then they did it again.
Mhm.
And it really solidified New Jersey during that time as this is a pretty good team. And they had incredible players, incredible talent. There was the Kovalchuk thing.
Oh yeah.
Um, like it's I and like I make no bones about it on this show. Like Locked On Avalanche, I'm Avalanche fan number one every day of my life. But
Yeah.
I love and respect the Devils. They're in the East. They don't affect my Avalanche. They don't ruin their life. And I cheer for the Devils from afar. As I'm talking to you, I have a Jack Hughes game jersey over there. I also have a Mackenzie Blackwood. Hey, there you go.
Yeah,
See?
he's right here. But
And
first
like
hockey.
And I have a Mackenzie Blackwood. I was a big fan of him coming into the league. Um, it kinda hasn't paid its dividends yet, but I was a big fan of him coming into the league. Um, so I love the Devils, and I love where they're going. I feel like I mentioned this with Neil, and I mentioned this on I did a Locked On NHL, like, multiple hour live stream during free agency period. Like, when it went live and everybody started moving, it felt like Kadri would be that piece landing in Jersey that would land them
Mhm.
in the playoffs. It feels like New Jersey is one talented veteran away, like a Johnny Hockey, a Nas, one piece like that, not just to get them into a round, but push them into that second round because of the core that they're building right now. Being a Devils fan, being and having this heavy scouting background, what can you tell me about the New Jersey Devils going into this next season, 2022-23? What do you see in this core? What needs to be shed and what needs to be acquired for the Devils to start making noise?
Well, one of the first things, if you look over last year, the
Mhm,
bottom six was okay, but it wasn't great. Pavel
mhm,
Zacha was nearing the end of his equity in New Jersey, his equity years, and everyone knew he was on his way out. And I will tell you, I used to get I got cut from the baseball team at Columbia High School, and it's not easy because you're in a Group 4 Group 4 Section 2 NJSIA, and it's hard to know when you see your name not on that list. And I
yeah,
knew that day forward, when I look at the rosters for hockey, I look at and I've talked to Trey, I talk to Neil, I say, this guy, this defenseman does not suit us. Not gritty enough, not passionate enough. And then I'll say something like, uh, Tom Fitzgerald's got these guys and Ball and Ahochuk, Vukovic.
mhm,
You got Luke Hughes now, and I mentioned, before earlier, Shimon Nemec now. And I knew that the Devils needed a little bit more right-handed defense. They went right-handed defenseman heavy. But back to the earlier question, looking at the part of the Holla trade, I
mhm,
really like it because you're acquiring a veteran who can still be a good finisher. Maybe not the icing on the cake, but someone who's a leader in the room
mhm,
that knows what it's like to take being in Boston when Bruce Cassidy was there.
yeah,
And then you add in Palat, and Palat to me is a top 9 forward, easily top
mhm,
6 still. And even when he degrades over time, he'll be a third line, second line guy easily.
mhm,
The Devils already have a Miles Wood. And
mhm,
if Wood, Bastion can play with Palat on 4 different lines, you're going to see a New Jersey team that can roll with a couple snipers like Igor Sharangovich. Maybe Holtz makes it out of camp. I can see it. I can see Mercer becoming a bit more of a scorer.
yeah,
Yes, Jesper Bratt is going to have a breakout year. Look out. Anyone having a fantasy team, you better have Mercer. You better have Jack Hughes. To me, Jack Hughes should be a top 15 pick in fantasy easily because if you're going to get Connor McDavid and you miss out on McDavid, go get Jack Hughes or Leon Draisaitl.
Now, from an Avalanche background, being Avalanche heavy, and that's kind of I mean, it's literally my backdrop. There's a little Devil's flag back there, so it's there. But, being Avalanche heavy, I know what it's like to have a captain in the passenger seat. What need does anything need to be done with the captain C, not the captaincy, but the captain letter C in New Jersey? Or are you perfectly fine with how everything is? Is he the leader? Or talk to me about the captaincy in New Jersey.
So first off, it's Nico Heischer. Second off, Dougie Hamilton could have easily been a captain, but being an alternative, definitely stay. Ryan Graves could easily be an alternate captain
Mhm.
because he's been around the game for a while. He's been around the Rangers. He's been around Colorado, and he was a really great stalwart.
Mhm.
There's another guy I think who deserves that, and Jonas Siegenthaler. Jonas Siegenthaler
Mm.
across the board, amazing pickup, really great value for a third round pick from the Capitals, and also, I mean, let me put it this way: there are some Devils fans who are Yankee fans, and loving and growing up knowing Derek Jeter, I see Nico Hischier more like Derek Jeter, where he's a doer but not a sayer. He
Mhm.
doesn't say much. He just goes out, executes. He leads by example. If you want someone who does a little bit of both, it would be Jack Hughes. However, he's starting to settle into that big year. Even though he's in the middle of that eight-year contract in the early part, he's going to start to show why he can be a captain. But I don't want to give him too much of a weight.
All
So
right. Let me
that's why it's going to be Nico still.
let me ask you this, because this is something I've been watching and observing from my beautiful den over here, watching Devils and Avalanche
It's
kind of
beautiful.
in a parallel. When it comes to Heischer, I love him. I really do. I'm going to ask you, Jersey Joe, to take
Mhm.
off your scout hat,
Yeah.
and I'm going to sit you right down in the rock in the Prudential Center.
Yep.
You're going to put on your Devil's hat. You're going to sit there. You're going to enjoy this game. What is everyone around you? What is the Devils fan base opinions of Heischer as a standalone player? Because I bring this up because I find some kind of similarities with his captaincy, and this is the actual word, not the captain letter C. The captaincy with Heischer, with Gabe Landeskog in Colorado, where it felt like Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon were kind of stealing the spotlight a little bit and taking it away from Gabe Landeskog, where he was a pretty average producer. You knew what you were getting. And then he started really developing this leadership role on the bench, on the ice. And then something that he really developed the year before the Avalanche won the cup and really refined in the year they won the cup was finding his weapon when it came to his skill of setting up in the slot, getting dirty down there, getting in a goalie's face, getting in a defender's face, and making it hard on everybody in the slot and in the crease, and opening it up for everybody on the perimeter. Gabe Landeskog found his place. He established himself as a leader, but also needed to find somewhere to be on the roster talent wise to keep up. Heischer, I feel like, is in that same position where you mentioned Mercer, Siegenthaler, you mentioned Hughes, and then you have Graves and Hamilton all as defensemen having a
Yep.
little bit more of a spotlight. Where does Heischer need to go and do, and what can he go and do to claim some of that on the ice? Because if you're not commanding the locker room through speech, and if you're when you do speak, people listen, but you're not
Mhm.
out there barking and constantly navigating. Where does Heischer need to establish himself on the ice to be more of a presence going forward? Because I feel like he often gets forgotten when you're making these top whatever list, insert number here, of all of these position players, captains. He often gets looked over because I feel like Heischer's still trying to find not just his voice on and off the ice, but his position on the team. I still feel like that's fluid. Where do you see Heischer going?
One of the things I'm going to try and not wear my scout hat as much, but when I grew up watching him in his draft year with Halifax and with the
Mhm.
Swiss, he was absolutely Datsyukian because he was able to strip the puck, take away passing lanes, create offensive breakouts, when he was playing defense. One of the problems in his first couple seasons was he wasn't shooting the puck enough. He was too much pass first. He was too much of a, how do I put this properly? Too passive. Now
Raymond
he's
Felton.
now he's gotten a little bit more of a instinctive, fairly not greedy, but a bit of greed, a good sense of it, to be more of a shooter. What he needs to do a little bit more is shoot a little bit more often, up his shooting percentage a little bit, and just focus on doing that little small thing. To me, if he can just stay just doing what he's doing now and just shoot a few more goals in a few more key situations, I think a lot more people will recognize him a little bit more, not just on the Devils, but throughout the league. Because you I've heard Christy Flannery say this, and then someone else brought this up on it was Andrew Burnett on the Cameron Strick podcast, and I believe it because uh, he, to me, Nico Heischer is Patrice Bergeron like in that sense. Because to me, I've been saying this on the Let's Go Devils podcast before, and I said this before Seattle, and I said during that day game, I said you're gonna have guys like Mercer, Hughes, Heischer, and then whoever you put on the fourth center line, you're going to have at least 3 Selke Trophy candidates on the Devils. That's how good defensively those guys are. Now, if you mix in a few snipers and a playmaker on the wing, maybe a big bash boy, a couple bash boys on the 4 lines right there, 1 through 4, you're looking at a team that can really scare the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Capitals, and maybe steal a few games from the Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes, because this Metropolitan started to shift.
Yeah.
And the Flyers are going to go take hard for Bedard.
And the thing that concerns me, and I feel like with everything you're saying, it might get addressed this year, especially if Heischer understands what he needs to do and adds a little bit more offense to his game. But with everything that we mentioned to the Devils to this point, of being 1 or 2 pieces away, building and the core starting to understand what they're doing and their role and their place, um, and like the goalie position still up in the air, you can figure it out. It's not established and it's not set, but the Avalanche also set the precedent. It doesn't really matter as long as your defense is in front of you. But I feel like the Devils need to also feed into Heischer to make him more of a solid C, because we just listed off 5 or 6 names that could be alternate, if not rival the captain. And you can't have that going into the East. You can't have mutiny on the ship, for lack of a better term. And you've got to have an established voice and leader to push this, especially with behind the bench still being adjusted. And I want this Devils team to have more of a voice going forward. And if this could be Heischer's year to find it and establish himself and lead this team to where it needs to be, I think it would be great. If not, it's going to be another year of the same old, and then Jersey fans will start giving up about game 40, and around the All-Star break, throw up your hands and say, same old Devils team, and they'll check in again next year. I don't want to see that happen, because I feel like this could be the year they start breaking hearts in that Metro.
Well, let me put it this way. So the Devils went out, they got Andrew Burnett as an assistant coach to help run the power play. And then they got Ryan McGill from Vegas, who's there to help not only with the penalty kill, but the defense itself. Let me start with the defense again. You have guys in front of Vanacek and Blackwood now. You have
Mhm.
competition in the net for once, and stability looking to occur once again. Now, back to the defense. Ball, Ahochuk are going to be there in camp. Vukovic is going to be there. You're going to have Ryan Graves. You're going to have Siegenthaler. You're going to have maybe Riley Walsh on the right side. You have John Marino, who the Devils traded Ty Smith for. I actually like John Marino. He was one of
I
my
do
favorite
too.
players outside of the Devils on the Penguins, who I've noticed in the
Mhm.
playoffs as a consistent third line guy,
Yep.
bringing some, physicality, doing the small things right, and all the small things, that is. And
Thank you.
then Damon Severson, for me, I see him losing his job. And whenever I think of him defensively, not the guy. He's
Yeah.
the guy I would trade in a heartbeat. And knowing Dougie Hamilton being our number one right-handed defenseman, it's good to know that you have this kind of internal competition. And with that being said, camp is going to be more fierce than anything. Me knowing what Tom Fitzgerald's building after having been with so many years with the Penguins under Ray Shero, you want to see that. And to me, this speaks high volumes, along with the assistant coaches you added. And this is Lindy
Mhm.
Ruff's last year of his contract. I've said this before with Sam Wu, Neil Villapiano, and Trey Matthews, those three podcasters. I said, look for the Devils to transition away from Lindy Ruff, but into a different role,
Yeah.
but still be part of the team. But it's going to be Andrew Brunette who becomes the head coach of the Devils.
Yep.
And Elliot Friedman said this before, that he believes that Ruff is on a tight leash. If anything happens, it's not going to be same old Devils. It's going to be the new look Devils with a new captain at the ship, making sure the generals that go on the ice do the job.
You know what? And thanks for dropping Sam Wu on here. That's the third name I didn't get to mention. Love Sam, everything he does, and he's a PSU guy, Penn State University, and
Yeah,
he knows why I'm shouting that out. And I met him before at the March game between the Avs and Devils. So shout out Sam Wu.
yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree. It feels like a kind of a coach in waiting type scenario. Like that's how they kind of do in football. It feels like a coach in waiting situation for the Devils. So yeah, I totally feel that it might not be so much a same old Devils because I feel like
Nope.
Fitzgerald's time with this Fitzgerald is tired of these same old Devils and he wants to see things change.
Also, I mean, I talked to fans before, and whenever they listen to a Devils podcast, or I see them on Twitter or Facebook, they're like, "When is Ruff going to get fired? When is you know this team going to get a really good coach?" And they've been asking for different types of coaches. Then they see Golan going to have a good year with the Rangers, and you see Laviolette having a good year the with another team, and then you see, Washington, of course, and then the Predators with John Hines. Well, I think the way those teams are designed in a way to keep up with those coaches, unless
Mhm.
too many of those pieces are gone. But I've made a prediction before with the East. I have Carolina as number one.
Mhm.
Number two, I have the Rangers. Three, the Devils. Four, I have uh, the Capitals. Fifth, I have Pittsburgh just losing out by a couple points. Um, Columbus missing out as well. I have the Islanders just going lower and lower because of what's happening with the offensive core. Is It's aging. The defense is good, but Sorokin and Varlamov are probably going to get less goal support. And then you look at Philly, they only added Tony DeAngelo via trade or whatever.
Ooh.
So that's my prediction for the Metropolitan.
Well, I like what you're seeing, and I like what you're saying, and I can subscribe to that. And you know what? And for the fans of here in Puckberg and who have enjoyed listening to you, before we wrap this up, how can everyone find you on outside of here in Puckberg?
All right, so I'm over at Instagram at underscore Joe of Jersey, Jersey, and then outside of Instagram, you'll also see me at Twitter at at let me double check this
You
because
are
I'm going.
Jersey Joe 11 underscore NJ.
Yeah, there's an underscore in there. So
Yep.
Jersey Joe NJD underscore 11.
Yep.
Yep, that's me.
And you could
Um,
and he's
I have
also with Heads Up Hockey.
That's my podcast that I started uh, on Anchor.fm. So people can listen to me. I starting to do a little bit more like weekly now. I mean, COVID when it hit, I started to slow down a little bit. It was a bit stressful because of work then, but then um, when the hockey started to slow down because of it, I didn't want to just talk about the same topic over and over. It just felt like being a dead horse. So I took a break for a little bit. But during that time, I started writing more with the other blogs. But now I'm back to being on my own podcast again in season 5. Um, I hope people can enjoy. I mean, it's on anchor.fm. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you can look it on Google. So don't be surprised to see me on insidethepuck.com. So I'll be there, not just doing double stuff. I'll be doing other NHL things, but um, forgot to mention I do analytics stuff, but also like if you've seen that one where I mentioned um, what's his name, Peter Hauser and his projection,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that actually got Hauser's agent uh, to actually retweet. So
Well,
I actually got to talk to that agent behind the scenes.
well, if you want to check out this guy, and also when this episode drops, we'll have all of his socials tagged. So definitely follow. This guy's got the predictions and the retweets from agents. So
Yep.
maybe they'll start throwing some of those donations your way.
Oh yeah.
Making it rain, my friend. Well,
All right.
Jersey Joe, it's been an honor having you on. I always enjoy getting to talk Devils hockey whenever I get the chance. Just don't tell anybody at my day job. But
Oh no no no.
uh,
That's lips are sealed on that one.
yeah, let's not tell anyone. And anybody listening, you are also bound to secrecy.
Hey, well, I mean, I can reveal certain information, but I do have the screenshots from Hauser's agent. So
Hey, see, I see now. I trust you. Now I trust you. I know I'm in good hands with Jersey Joe.
yeah, I mean, look, I was one of those kids in school where they say, "Can you cite your sources?" Well, when it comes to certain podcasters and they're good with anonymity, I trust those ones because, like I try and keep as close to the vest as possible, but there are certain people who deserve it.
Yeah,
So, do you know Ryan Graves' fan page?
I know Alan. I consider him a brother.
he, he said this. He sees something special in the doubles from their prospect pool to the AHL to the NHL team, and I have to cite him with this that I spoke to Hauser's agent saying that the Devils should have brought over Yarmir Pitlick a little sooner instead of going to Liga. And I said to him, first off, I figured there's a log jam, and I think when Severson gets traded, there might be a few more pieces to move, and then you have to look at the next time there's an off season. Maybe there's a way that you can do it contractually, but I'm not sure. But I gotta ask him now. So
Yeah. Yeah, I actually had Alan on here sharing his Pucktales just like you did. So Alan's a good dude. Yeah, I've had Alan and Neil. I haven't had Sam on here. And I haven't had Trey. I'll complete the unholy devil's trinity. And then
you- if you want someone who drinks beer and has a good time on a podcast, you'll like Beer Baron from uh, the Let's Go Devils podcast. He's a great guy. I met him before at that game versus the Seattle Kraken. So I
mm,
met him there in person. Awesome dude. Uh, he is a true family man. Um, I gave him a big hug. He gave me a big hug. So uh, when you meet these people in person, you kind of forget that it's not just a hockey thing. It's a hockey and family atmosphere.
absolutely. I echo that 1,000%. But hey, and you know what? Well, as we're wrapping this up, everyone, thank you for stopping by. Whether you're here following Jersey Joe or if you're a lifelong resident here in Puckberg, thanks for following the show and listening. And if you would like to find here in Puckberg on Twitter, it's at HPuckberg on Twitter. On Instagram, it's here_in_Puckberg. I don't know why I say this every episode. We have a link tree. You could just click on that and find
Yeah.
everywhere. You can find us on YouTube. You can see us right here. We're waving at you. To
Hey.
all those that are listening, you're missing out on seeing my fingers moving in live action. But thank you guys, everybody, for joining us on this week's episode of Here in Puckberg. And we will see you all again real soon.